The second Cowboys report of the day is made possible by Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping on all their top-of-the-line men's grooming products when you use promo code COWBOYS over at manscaped.com. As promised, today we're taking a look at the Cowboys coaching staff as we enter the final year of Mike McCarthy's contract. We'll grade, discuss some of the new additions, the losses as well. But make no mistake, the single biggest thing about this coaching staff is the return of your head coach and your play caller as well in Mike McCarthy. Many of us, including yours truly, didn't want Mike McCarthy back. We wanted him fired, bring in someone new, make some real changes on offense. The Cowboys opting not to go that route, and it is now a potential lame duck status for Mike McCarthy in the final year of his deal, which doesn't happen very often in coaching, even in the NFL. So are you happy that Mike McCarthy is back as the Cowboys head coach? Y for yes, N for no. Sound off in the comments section. The Cowboys lost several assistant coaches to other jobs, pretty much almost all of them upgrades, I should say. Dan Quinn leaves as defensive coordinator, takes the Commanders' head coaching job, brings along 3 assistants with him. From Joe Witt, who was the Cowboys assistant, takes over as both the passing game coordinator and defensive coordinator for the Commanders. Sharif Floyd follows him as well. Same role, assistant D-line coach to assistant D-line coach. Pete Onigan also taking an assistant coaching role. So 3 coaches join Dan Quinn in Washington. Adam Dirty takes the Seahawks defensive coordinator job. He was the D-line coach last year. And Will Harriger upgraded from offensive assistant to the Panthers quarterbacks coach, reuniting with some other former Seahawks coaches in Carolina. The additions then, as of now, there could be a few more that happen, but we've kind of reached critical mass enough to do the video. All defense, Mike Zimmer, the new defensive coordinator. Paul Gunther, the run game coordinator. More in depth on him in a little bit. Jeff Scanina, which, it's Scanina despite ZGO at the front. I still don't get it. He's the new D-line coach. And Greg Ellis, the former Cowboys legend, first-round pick, taking over as the assistant defensive line coach. We'll go in depth more on some of the new guys, but the overall coaching staff here momentarily. But grades are promised. How do you grade this Cowboys coaching staff? A, B, C, D, or F? It is the pinned comment on today's video. If the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. The big one here, of course, is the new defensive coordinator. That is Mike Zimmer, taking over again as the Cowboys DC. His career has been eventful. NFL-wise, there was kind of some, both as a staffer, not as a staffer, at Jackson State in Colorado, involved with Deion Sanders, kind of helping out more informally at Colorado. Vikings head coach for several years. Cowboys, Falcons, and Bengals defensive coordinator from 2000 to 2013. Almost a decade and a half, a very long time in those roles. Was a longtime Cowboys assistant as well. Of the interviewed options from the Cowboys, I thought Mike Zimmer pretty clearly was the best of those options. That's not to say it's going to be perfect or it's a guaranteed thing to work, but it was a lot better than hiring Ron Rivera, etc. I am hoping he can make the needed changes as desired. That even if the overall regular results are the same, the playoff results, especially down the stretch this past year, can be significantly better. I will say one thing. This will not be an instant overnight fix, the same way that maybe Dan Quinn taking over Mike Nolan was. You were already a good defense overall. You might see some initial regression and be better late in the year because change on defense can often lead that. Change like anywhere. Look at that. You got to get adjusted to a new defensive coordinator. Not to say it's going to fall apart. It shouldn't. I'd be concerned if it did. But it might not. It might be a little bit of a more up and down, peak and valley thing with the goal that the January, February results a lot better than what we've had in recent years. Number 2, to an extent, on this defensive coaching staff is Al Harris. He is staying as the defensive backs coach. And I think working for Zimmer could help Al Harris. You know, Harris has made comments about I wanted to join Dan Quinn. Well, the Cowboys blocked him from interviewing with the Commanders for that secondary coaching job, sticking around under his old coach, Mike McCarthy, as well. I think Harris being here can learn some good things from Mike Zimmer, who himself was a secondary background guy. Maybe less so technique, more schematic things that could result down the road in Al Harris actually getting defensive coordinators. He didn't get any this cycle. Probably tells you where he's at in his less, player-friendly coaching stuff and more the coordination side of things. Today's show is made possible by Manscaped. 2024 is here, and it's time for a New Year's resolution check-in with our friends over at Manscaped. It is never too late to level up your grooming game and keep your bush tamed. That comes with the all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It is the MVP of 2024. It gets an A grade from me. It's not just a trimmer, it's your grooming sidekick. 2 skin-safe blade heads, a stand-up taking a little bit off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It's like having a personal stylist at your fingertips or wherever you end up needing to use it for. By the way, it is waterproof because the shower is probably the best spot to do that anyway. Get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use promo code Cowboys. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description of today's video. The ball is dropped on the new year. Don't drop the ball, or something more painful, on your balls. Embrace a new you, and make sure you've embraced a new trimmer as well from Manscaped. It's manscaped.com, promo code Cowboys. All right, Jeff Skanita, I will never get used to that. What's interesting here for Skanita is there's no real connection between anyone on this staff with him in terms of Mike Zimmer, or he's a longtime NFL player. He spent time with the Steelers and Panthers and Falcons and all these other teams, but there's never really that overlap. And coaching staff-wise, Texans assistant defensive line coach, Giants assistant D-line coach, Commanders for a couple years, Niners as well. I wonder, this is pointed out by Bobby Belt on his podcast with Brian Broaddus, and it was a good point. I wonder if this is a name that Ron Rivera mentioned as, hey, this is a really good coach. And the Cowboys like, hey, we got a good review from Rivera. The Joneses were like, McCarthy and Zim, could that work for you? And they're like, Zim then reached out to his contacts. So, yeah, I think that certainly makes some sense. So, good results in San Francisco and the Commanders, by the way, overall, defensive line. It's a solid hire as far as I'm concerned. Now, Scott McClurley is back again as the linebackers coach. And I would argue for the second time, there is another defensive assistant who might take on some of the responsibilities that McClurley has had before. They had hired George Edwards when Dan Quinn came in. Edwards did a lot of stuff with the linebackers, and then George Edwards kind of gets forced out. Now the new Zimmer-led staff has hired Paul Guenther as the run game coordinator. And if you go, all these DCs, they've got a particular spot they're at their best with. Where is it for Paul Guenther? Linebackers. Zimmer does DBs. Guenther does linebackers. Dan Quinn did defensive line. Guenther was a senior Vikings assistant in 2021 with Zim. Multi-time defensive coordinator, Raiders and the Bengals, and part of a long run with the Bengals as an assistant coach, also under Zimmer. He took over when Zimmer got the head coaching job in Cincinnati, by the way, or in Minnesota. He took over in Cincinnati as the DC. Linebackers was mostly his fortitude. I think this is a strong hire by Dallas. You got to figure out your run game there. I think your front seven / safety / spine deserve a predominant amount of that blame. And I think adding Guenther should help the linebackers as well. I think the results you've gotten from Scott McClurley, who was clearly a Mike McCarthy hire through and through, have not been great. How much is on the position coach? I don't know. But I thought, it's not an accident that Edwards was working so much with the linebackers and McClurley kind of wasn't. So I think adding Guenther makes a lot of sense for Dallas. Rapid here on the other defensive assistants. Greg Ellis, along with Darian Thompson, 2 Cowboys legends. Now on the staff, Thompson was here last year, by the way. He's kind of does some quality control, assistant linebacker stuff. Cannon Matthews, still the assistant DBs coach. Eric Simonelli, quality control / analytics. Greg Ellis is the notable one. He's done some NAIA head coaching stuff. Now gets to jump to the NFL. So sizable jump, but this is a guy Zimmer knows super well. Could make some sense. Could have seen someone like Leon Lett stick around if he, actually had a job here anymore, but he doesn't. He got fired last year, or invited on to return, whatever you want to call it, as the assistant D-line coach. So what is your confidence level in Mike Zimmer and this defensive coaching staff? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Over to the offensive staff, where for now, not many changes. Would like to see that potentially change. Mike McCarthy back as the head coach play caller. I've made my thoughts clear on that. Don't want to rehash it and be too negative. Brian Schottenheimer back as the offensive coordinator, along with Scott Tolzien, the quarterback's coach. I need better from these guys. I think the run game stuff we'll get to here in a little bit. The red zone stuff kind of struggled early on. It's probably one of Schottenheimer, Tolzien in charge of kind of implementing that throughout the week. It got better, so I feel better about that. Mike Solari, at least as of now, is set to return as the offensive line coach. James Campen is out there unemployed, and that's someone the Cowboys tried to hire last time, and they were blocked by the Panthers. We'll see if they revisit that, if Jerry is willing to spend the way he needs to spend to buy out the Solari contract, our renewal language. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I thought your run game stuff in general was pretty damn disappointing. More on that in a little bit. Robert Prince has re-signed as the wide receivers coach. Todd Archworth, he was the only one out of contract in Dallas, I believe. So good news if you've liked the development of guys like CeeDee Lamb, et cetera, or if you think it matters at all. There you go. Lunda Wells, also back as the tight ends coach. He was the Cowboys blocked Commanders from a Lunda Wells interview request. It was going to be for the offensive line. They ended up hiring Bobby Johnson. It was a bad hire, by the way, for the Commanders instead. Glad to see Wells back. It's always tough to really know how much the position coach gets credit for player development. We've seen pretty consistent growth from multiple players at tight end, though. I think Wells gets some credit there. We have multiple Cowboys videos for you guys every single day. Minimum one, sometimes as many as 2 or 3. So don't miss out. Hit that sub button right now. Jeff Blasco, also back as the run game / running backs coach. That's run game coordinator. It is a red flag, for me at least, when your run game is not very good in the first year of a run game coordinator's job. I love that. I need more run game success. It's one thing to not be able to run it if your quarterback sucks or your O-line's terrible and you all of it's bad, but your boxes are loaded. The boxes are light that Dallas faces, and they have had issues moving the ball on the ground. I think that inside, I call it tight zone that they were running, was not working. Do some duo. Do some outside zone. I need to see schematic changes here. They did some of that Shanahan toss stuff, inside toss, that worked really well. Why they stopped doing it, I don't know. Other assistants, who again, as I believe are going to be back here, Ramon Shin-Young is the assistant offensive line coach. Chase Hazlitt is the assistant tight ends coach. Ryan Federer is the offensive assistant in charge of some management stuff, which hasn't always been great. It's tougher in-game. Evan Harrington, offensive assistant. Justin Rudd is quality control and analytics too. I wouldn't expect any drastic changes there, but I would like to add one more coach. Even that's just James Campen, taking over as O-line coach / giving him the run game coordinator title. My concern is this. There's been no real change to your offensive coaching staff. And, we saw issues throughout the year. We saw them deviate from the game plan in the most important game against Green Bay, and it shattered my trust in them. So if there are no coaching changes on offense, do we trust the guys to get better on that side of the ball? I don't know. So which side of the ball do you trust more? O for the offense, D for the defense. Sound off in the comments section. One more note before we go. Wouldn't expect changes here. Bones Fossil, special teams coach. Raina Stewart back as the assistant special teams coach. Harold Nash leading your strength and conditioning. Kendall Smith and Cedric Smith back as the assistant strength and conditioning coaches there. I have no issues with these areas, so keep doing good stuff. And as much as possible, keep your guys healthy.